Poor old bananas aren't getting a good run this morning. We've twice tried to get to that story, but now we've got to go to the Social Services Minister, Scott Morrison, speaking in Canberra.
Well, what I'm pleased about is that the counter-terrorism unit that it was set up by the government within Customs and Border Protection continues to do outstanding work. But what is always necessary when you're doing this work is that you're working with the community and you're able to act on the intelligence that you get that ensures that you can prevent people leaving and you pick those up on the way in. That's what I believe is happening very strongly, and I commend Minister Dutton for continuing that really strong work with the Australian Customs and Border Protection Service and with the Australian Border Force setting up in just a few months from now. I think that will further strengthen those arrangements, and again I commend Minister Dutton for the outstanding work he's doing in bringing the Australian Border Force into being.
Is it racial profiling?
Sorry?
Is it racial profiling?
Well, they're matters I have to refer you to the current Minister for. What I know is that the Australian Border Force will take up that job in July, and the very quick work done by Customs and Border Protection to get that counter-terrorism unit in place means that we've had a lot of very successful interceptions that has prevented young men from going overseas. When we came into government, we inherited a situation where the Customs and Border Protection Service had over $700 million ripped out of it, and those arrangements, unchanged, led to Khalid Sharif leaving the country. It was the same set of arrangements in place when he left the country, when the former government was in place. We went to work very quickly to remedy that, and that work is being continued excellently by Minister Dutton.
In leaked text messages from Phil Higginson, he refers to Peta Credlin as a horsewoman from the apocalypse. What do you make of that assessment?
Well, I don't make anything of it. I don't go around reading everybody's text messages and emails.
Is it disappointing there have been further leaks?
Well, look, I don't know anything about them, so I can't really comment on them.
How are negotiations with changes to pension indexation progressing?
Well, the pension will go up this Friday, and the pension goes up every March and every September, and it'll continue to do so. And in the discussions that we're having with the crossbench, it's about providing a further level of comfort, a safety net, around those increases linked to CPI. We should note that the last two increases have been on the CPI, not on male tail weekly average earnings, the Matawi. And had it been on that index, then the increases would actually have been much less. And so there will be a CPI increase this week, and that will provide further support to pensioners across Australia. We want to see a pension that is there for those who really need it and at a level which helps them with their costs of living. And we also want to make sure it's sustainable. I mean, the budget doesn't have some sort of super metabolism where it can just accommodate all the excessive spending of the previous government and that there is never any need to do anything about it. I mean, we need a reality check here about the state of the budget and what we inherited from the previous government and the decisions that need to be taken to ensure that this gets under control over the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years and 30 years. I mean, I hear all the time in my time in public life about the need for politicians to take a long-term view. Well, that's what this government is doing. We are trying to set the budget up for the long-term future, to make payments sustainable, to ensure the safety net that is there for today's Australians is there for tomorrow's Australians. And this is the sort of sensible and reasonable discussion we're having with the crossbenchers, and I look forward to continuing to progress these very important matters. It's disappointing that Labor wants to be a conversation stopper when it comes from having a sustainable pension and an adequate pension for the future. And the Coalition is a conversation starter and an engager when it comes to these important issues for the country.
Minister, a lot of this was started when you were the Immigration Minister. What is it that Customs and Border Protection officials are looking for? How is it that they profile somebody to pull them out of a line at an airport?
Well, again, those are no longer matters that fall within my portfolio, so I'll leave those to the current Minister to comment on. I appreciate that, and I'm very pleased that the work that we commenced is being pursued so well by the current Minister.
What is the mood like within the party room over these pension changes? We have heard from a number of Liberal backbenchers who say that these are another barnacle that they want removed.
Well, look, I appreciate the positive feedback I've had in seeking to engage the crossbench from our own government members. The feedback they're picking up in their communities is being relayed to me, and I want to address that and work constructively with government members and with the crossbenchers in the Senate. And my preference also would be to work constructively with the opposition, but the opposition simply just don't think they think they can just shovel money out the door forever, and there are never any consequences for that. I mean, if they're not prepared to engage in a rational, reasonable discussion about the policy options for how we make the pension sustainable and adequate for the future, then they need to demonstrate where they're going to get the savings from. Where are they going to achieve this, and what sort of cuts are they going to make, or what taxes are they going to put up to support those sorts of unending increases in payments that seems to be clearly part of their plan.
Have you spoken to Andrew Laming about his concerns about the changes?
Yeah, I've spoken to Andrew, I've spoken to many members about these issues, and I engage with them very regularly, not just on this issue, but the many other issues we're dealing with at present, particularly the childcare package, which we continue to work on as the weeks press on, and we're keen to have that in place and out there before the budget. But there's a bit more work to do on that. We're continuing to consult on those issues, and of course we're working on other changes to help young people get into work. I mean, that is a big challenge facing this country, and it has been happening now for quite a period of time that we've seen the participation of young men in particular falling in this country, and we need to turn that around. We need to do what we can to get young people into work and sticking to a job to set themselves up for the future so they don't live a life on welfare. I mean, 8 out of 10 income tax payers go to work every single day to pay for this country's welfare budget. And we need to make sure it helps those who most need the help, and for those who we can get on an employer's payroll rather than on a taxpayer's welfare payroll, well, that's a good outcome for the country. Thanks very much.
One more on the pension, if you don't mind.
Okay, so that was live from Parliament House in Canberra. The Social Services Minister Scott Morrison speaking on a range of issues there, including efforts to reform the pension system. We haven't heard at this stage if the Prime Minister Tony Abbott or the Opposition Leader Bill Shorten is holding a media conference yet today. And the Prime Minister